From the library of the New York Stock Exchange at the corner of Wall and Broad Streets in New York City, you're inside the Ice House, our podcast from Intercontinental Exchange on markets, leadership, and vision in global business. The dream drivers that have made the NYSE an indispensable institution of global growth for over 225 years. Each week, we feature stories of those who hatch plans, create jobs, and harness the engine of capitalism. Right here, right now at the NYSE and at ICE's exchanges and clearinghouses around the world. And now welcome inside the Ice House. Here's your host, Josh King of Intercontinental Exchange.
The only question I hear as often as, can I ring the New York Stock Exchange trading floor bell, is the related one to this. How does the exchange actually decide who rings the bell? And well, the answer is we don't. Rather, we offer companies and other organizations the privilege of opening and closing the markets. We set the parameters on how many people can be on the podium, 14. In case you're wondering, it's really a space and a safety issue. But we leave the most important decision up to the bell ringing group. As we discussed way back in episode 122, the leaders of Uber, when it finally went public, chose its first intern, Austin Geit, to do the honors for their listing ceremony. Typically, the bell ringer for a high-profile IPO is the founder or CEO of their respective organization. One exception to that is the favorite bell memory of my colleague, the executive producer of this show, Pete Ash. Back in April 2017, a few months before I arrived here at the NYSE, Schneider National, the company behind the 10,000 or so orange long-haul trucks that crisscross the country, celebrated its initial public offering. Members of the Schneider family, its then CEO, Chris Lofgren, and senior executives were all on the podium, but none of them rang the bell. Instead, when it came time to announce the company's listing on the New York Stock Exchange, Schneider driver Bob Wyatt pressed the button and safely opened the markets. It's the most high-profile moment of his career, which spanned over 45 years and over 5 million miles across North American highways behind the wheel for Schneider. Notably, as he informed everyone he spoke to that day, those feats were enshrined on his Hall of Fame plaque as Safe Years Driving. Hall spelled H-A-U-L, if you were wondering. When we went back to look up Bob ahead of this podcast, we were saddened to see that he passed away in 2019, just 2 years after he left his mark here on our trading floor and on all of Wall Street with that long-haul trucker's contented smile. His obituary on the Schneider website captures the essence of what we all imagine is the figure of an old-school trucker. The obituary said, quote, "For those lucky enough to know Bob, they can confirm that he had uncompromising integrity. He was as tough as nails, and his work ethic was unsurpassed. Like a modern cowboy, he was a mix of seeming opposites, strong yet kind, hard-working yet fun-loving, solitary yet social." Our guest today, Mark Rourke, was also on the bell podium for that historic day and has now returned to the New York Stock Exchange. A legendary veteran of his company, he's been with Schneider since 1987. But for the last 5 years has been in the company's driver's seat as its CEO. Our conversation with Mark Rourke on Schneider National's evolution, the technology driving the industry, and how the future is safer, greener, and brighter for drivers, clients, and investors. That's all coming up right after this.
Shopify Editions is back with over 100 product updates and enhancements all in one place. Explore our latest solutions for every aspect of commerce, from starting and scaling a business
so you can sell everywhere easier,
to flexible components for enterprise needs.
Businesses can choose which technologies they need to create the customer experience they want.
And developer tooling to customize any commerce experience.
We know how important it is to offer the right mix of power, flexibility, and customization across our surfaces.
No matter what you're building, you can build for the long term with Shopify. Visit shopify.com/editions.
Our guest today, Mark Rourke, is the CEO and President of Schneider National. That's NYSE ticker symbol SNDR. Joined Schneider in 1987 as a service team leader, and over his tenure, He's held a variety of leadership roles, including COO, President of Truckload Services, and General Manager of Schneider Transportation Management. Mark serves on the board of the Green Bay Packers, the Shift Group, and the Trucking Alliance. Welcome inside the Ice House, Mark.
Great to be here. Thank you.
So how did Bob capture what the entire company wanted to share with the market that morning, that IPO that I talked about?
Well, it just speaks to the culture of the organization that it really does start with the folks that touch our customers every day. And Bob was such a unique and special person. You didn't mention in that we actually had to get a waiver. It said he can wear his jeans and his jacket not in a suit and tie, although he was quite worried about that day. But he was outstanding, and we miss him today.
Mark, you began your career in 1987 when the company was still helmed by Don Schneider, the son of Schneider's founder, Al Schneider. I want to hear from him just with a little clip.
Think of all the people in the world, and especially in North America, that we're helping to live better. When you go to the store, and on the shelf you come to the cereals, and we had done some very creative things, and as a result that price is more in line. Isn't that as valuable to helping the citizens of North America? Because they are going to get a better value and their money will go further.
Better value on the store shelves. Tell me about this family business that began with one truck in 1935, made its first interstate trip in 1958 for Procter & Gamble. That's our NYSE ticker symbol P&G.
Yeah, it really is just an American success story. Our founder sold the family station wagon to buy a truck, wanted to help serve the paper and beer industry in Wisconsin. To sit here 88 years later representing that dream is both surreal, but it's also a tremendous honor.
So the paper industry in Wisconsin, what did that industry need and what was his solution?
Is the industry was taking over in Wisconsin because of the waterways. And if you look up and down, and still today, up and down the Fox Valley, paper mills are up and down the rivers and the lakes, and it was just a key input to the process. And so when I started with the company back in 1987, our biggest customers were big paper, and we would take it to the publishers out east, magazines and paper.
The huge spools that would go on the printing presses?
Yeah, the parent rolls, I think they were called. And obviously the internet age and the digital age changed that industry dramatically. And it's more of a specialty paper industry today. So it's a much, much smaller part of what we do. But it was the dominant industry in Wisconsin, and it was the dominant industry for what we served.
Don was a driving force in the company's embracing technology and also navigating the impact of the Motor Carrier Act of 1980. You said recently, I'm going to quote you here, at one point we had more lawyers than we had salespeople, and not quite the image that I had growing up in trucking, which is less legal and more of a action movie. Just want to hear a little clip.
The boys are thirsty in Atlanta, and there's beer in Texarkana, and we'll bring it back no matter what it takes. Eastbound and down, loaded up and trucking. Are we gonna do what they say can't be done? We've got a long way to go and a short time to get there. I'm eastbound, just watch your bandit run.
So, Mark, I have this dear friend named Mort Engelberg, Hollywood producer, who signed up Burt Reynolds and Sally Field to star in the original Smokey and the Bandit. How did the decade after Smokey and the Bandit change trucking? And what was your introduction to the business? Well,
really what happened is that whole deregulation, and you moved from having to have authority or have your lawyers say that you could move on a lane for a certain commodity to you competed on your price, you competed on your service and your capability. And that really unlocked the whole industry. And Don's visionary to go out and get almost like an Oklahoma land grab. So how much share can we get? How fast can we grow? How many customers can we serve? And at the end of the day, if we do that well, we'll be relevant to our customers, we'll be relevant to our suppliers, and we'll be able to grow this business. And that's exactly what happened. That's how I joined. And Akron, Ohio was the first facility that was outside the state of Wisconsin. It was halfway between New Jersey and Wisconsin. So when we were taking that paper out, or that at the time, even I think meat we would take out occasionally, it was absolutely halfway in between. And so it was the perfect gateway.
I visited Akron at one point to visit the old Jeep factory. You attended University of Akron. Did you grow up in Ohio, and how did you end up 25 miles west in Seville working for Schneider?
So I grew up there. Transportation was always big in Ohio, I think because of that gateway feature. I could always kind of look to that as a potential career, but after I graduated, that's when this whole deregulation really started to catch fire in the trucking industry, and the rest is history, I guess.
When in your tenure with Schneider did you end up moving to Green Bay? And how did that community, the smallest to support an NFL team, shape how the company operates?
Well, it's still a Midwestern. I grew up in the Midwest, and there's good Midwestern values and a great place to raise a family in Green Bay. And so it was a good transition for us. It was not always easy as you make as a young person making that change. But looking back, I couldn't be more pleased. And it really does, the Green Bay Packers just represent that work ethic of the town and the connection they have to the community. As I've had a chance to be a board member now, I could really see how genuine and authentic that is, how the decisions that they make gets made through the lens of the community as well. It's part of the decision-making process. And so it's a very unique situation where you could have 200,000 people in that entire Green Bay and metro area. 80,000 of them could be in that stadium on a given Sunday. It's amazing.
Paint a picture of that room, that boardroom, and the people around the table and how they end up getting there. What's the process for picking a Mark Rourke or someone else to say, look, we want a representative sample of this community that is going to supervise the product that gets put on Lambeau Field?
Yeah, it's a small community, and the team is such in the fabric of the community, and so they want folks that have leadership positions to help them represent that. You know, they're a very professional organization, and so we're on the periphery. Clearly, we're not in the football operations, obviously, and very active in the foundation and supporting charities, and the local community leaders help them really think through and manage that process.
As you talk to your colleagues on the board and watch the league develop, what's your sort of state of the league thoughts as you run this unique organization in a league of 31 other sort of billionaire single owners?
Well, I'm just so impressed at how much the Green Bay Packers leadership focuses on the fan experience, how they run all of the operations to be the very best. And they really do live that Lombardi creed. And so I don't get involved in so much of the season elements, and I'm very new to the process. And so I get the pleasure of seeing sales and marketing and all the unique things that they're doing to digitize their world, just like we're starting to digitize ours.
Well, I'm not going to let you off the hook completely about that on-field product. Where do you think he'll be playing next year?
That's the $1 million, or I guess that's maybe a $60 million question, but you know, I know he's in the process of making that decision, and obviously has great support in the community, and we'll sit back and wait to hear like everybody else.
So with that, let's sort of get back to the day job at Schneider. Over time, in your time with the company, you got to do a little bit of everything, as an article last year described your career. How did Schneider grow and evolve, and how did those decades working across every aspect of the company prepare you to move into that COO role back in 2015?
You know what I give Don so much credit for is over the horizon of the company. He never was afraid to creatively deconstruct the company. And he always focused on the customer. And as opposed to fighting change, he embraced change and how that could benefit the company. So, for example, when we grew our intermodal offering, it was very destructive and very much changing how we'd operate our entire truck operations.
For listeners, what's an intermodal?
Well, that's when we partner with the trains, the Class 1 railroads, where we'll pick up the container and shovel it over to the rail yard, and they'll do the middle mile, most of the long length of haul, and then at the end we'll do the final mile into the customer. But that was what we used to do with our over-the-road truck fleet, and so highly destructive to what we normally did. But that's where the economy was going. That's where the benefit to the customer was going, and Don embraced that. And today we're a top 3 intermodal provider. And if he hadn't done that, we wouldn't be relevant in that space today. And so with that came opportunity and growth and the ability to not have to leave the company to get different experiences, whether it be around the customer, whether it be around operations. And so you just got a great general manager development path because you've got challenged in different areas. And so I'm so blessed to be here 35 years, but I never felt I had to leave to get that development, to get those opportunities. And so very grateful for that.
While you were Schneider's COO, you led the Driver Experience Initiative, which included what's known as the Schneider Compass. How do tools like Rate My Location leverage technology and crowdsourcing to improve the driver and overall operational experiences?
Yeah, who touches our customers most frequently and most directly is our driver associates. And so how we can best serve them and ultimately give feedback back to the customer to improve their operations is having ways to capture that feedback and challenges or where the issues are directly. And so on every one of our times that we go into a shipper or a consignee or a rail yard for that matter, we ask the driver to give us the feedback on 4 or 5 dimensions, so that if there's an early warning sign that something's not working right, we have an improvement opportunity. We can get at it and improve their experience, improve our efficiency, but also help our customers do a better job serving their customer.
How is that data capture working now? Do they sit with a handheld device and it comes into HQ immediately and gets scrubbed, or is it a longer process?
No, it's all real-time, digitally captured. All of our drivers have tablets that they can take out of the cab, in the cab, where they do their work, and we prompt them up that, hey, what'd you experience there today? And in a very few clicks, they can give us that feedback, and then we capture all of that digitally and put it together for our customers, and we look at it internally to say, okay, what's working, what's not working? How do we get better?
What's sort of the average length of a driver's haul, and how many hours do they work a day? And the question everyone wants to know who makes a pass of a long-haul trucker on the highway or sees them at a rest stop, like, are they sleeping in the back?
Yeah, a good many of our folks, probably 60% of our folks, are sleeping in the back if they're out over the road for an extended period of time. So it gives them the flexibility of their schedule, what makes sense for them. But our average length of haul across our trucking business is probably just about 400 miles. Mm-hmm. When I started, it was 1,200 miles, and that really speaks to the impact that the intermodal offering has had on, and also how we as consumers want our products quicker. And so the length of hauls have dropped as we put inventory closer and closer to the end consumer.
Is it federal, state, or local law that governs how long a driver can be behind the wheel before they have to take a mandated break?
Yeah, there's all federal rules there. And now with electronic logging, that's all captured. When I started, it was all paper and rulers, and now it's all captured right off the engine and on an electronic device.
According to a bunch of studies, Mark, U.S. truckers spend over a third of their time behind the wheel idling in lines or parked outside of warehouses. Do those initiatives that you worked on also help alleviate those issues as well in terms of maximizing the efficiency of their time in the truck?
Absolutely. And that's one of our biggest improvement opportunities, not only as a company, but in industry. And how we've attacked that is the predominance of what we do is a drop and hook. We're not waiting in line to get to a dock to get someone with a forklift to come in and load us. We'd like to put it out in the lot, and the customer can get it at their convenience to bring it in, so we can turn our driver with another trailer, another load. And that just makes us more efficient, and it's more respectful of the time of the driver.
You were in the front seat as COO working with then CEO Chris Lofgren, who I mentioned in the introduction, when the company made its decision to do its IPO here in the New York Stock Exchange after 80 years as a private family-owned company and nearly spinning off part of the business on the NYSE in 2001. Why was it finally time to go public in 2017?
Well, it gives us an opportunity to get access to capital and invest in things that we want to invest in to grow the business. It absolutely accomplished that goal. We're still closely held. We still have heavy family ownership of the organization. So we can very much take the long view, but we also have responsibility to shareholders and have to deliver results on a consistent and quarterly basis. And the company has done very, very well since that decision.
Shortly after the IPO, you got the call to lead Schneider starting April 2019 following Chris's retirement. Now, I think that makes you only the 4th president in the company's 88 years. How did that conversation with Chris go, and what advice did he give you?
Yeah, the company takes succession planning very, very seriously. And so we had a chance over a multi-year period to work on the things and be exposed to the items that only you get a chance to do when you're sitting in the CEO chair. And Chris was incredibly gracious and supportive. And while you never really know till you get there, I would say the transition for the company was non-eventful, and which is exactly what you're looking for. And I'm really, really pleased and fortunate to have that 2 or 3 year period to learn through that transition.
In the transition, I mean, going from Al to Don to Chris to you, and suddenly you're public and you come to New York to meet with investors of all people and have to do these things called quarterly calls. Did the management team and approach change at all? Did the culture change at all once you were a public company? You could see the value of the share price go up and down?
That was very much as our thought process going through this, that we didn't want to change the culture of the organization. We don't have a ticker symbol capture in the lobby. That's not what we're about. But it is a change because we have to do things slightly differently, obviously, as a public company. But to Don's credit, he had ran the company very much like a public company with an independent board of directors, actually put the entire voting trust into the control of the independent directors so that, again, they could have governance and have a company that was built to last beyond him. And so that part of the transition was quite easy because we were used to running with an outside independent board of directors. The things that you mentioned, coming to New York. And that's all the things we had to start to build some muscle around. But we're starting to get there.
We talked about the way Bob was on the podium in his jeans and his Carhartt jacket. You're sitting across from the table wearing an orange tie, probably reminiscent of the side of the trucks. How did that brand of orange evolve, and what's the power of it as those trucks move across the highway?
Yeah, it's very purposeful. And Don's thought was, what's the safest color? He's a hunter, hunts in Wisconsin. So what do you wear when you're out in the woods in Wisconsin? You wear your blaze orange. What's safe around the roads? You always see the orange construction barrels. And so he selected Omaha orange as the color of the company with the safety culture in mind. And it's now everywhere.
So even before going public, Schneider made a lot of high-profile acquisitions along its development, from Schneider Transport and Storage to the modern Schneider National. And you're here in New York, and bankers want to know what you're doing next, I suppose. But did going public help the company compete as M&A has heated up across the industry, as you've seen more consolidation of your competitors?
Yeah, we think consolidation is a likely outcome. We're a highly fragmented industry. We've made and started to get back into some acquisition targets and had some success in the last year. We've actually did 2, and we have a strategic intent to grow around dedicated contract services for our customers, which is a long-term contract. We're doing specialty services. It's not an irregular route setup. It's every day we're running the similar routes and providing perhaps some value-added services along that, besides just driving from A to B. And that's really one of our strategic growth drivers. And had the fortune to find a company in Ohio again, believe it or not, MLS. And I think it was December 31st, about 10 o'clock at night when that finally came down. So we didn't have the greatest holiday, but couldn't be happier sitting here a year later and how well that's gone and how that well integrated into our business. And we're looking for more.
Looking for more. So after the break, Mark Rourke, the CEO of Schneider National, and I are going to talk about the technology, demographics, and trends that are shaping the industry today and into the future, and whether looking for more includes expansion in any of those areas. That's all coming up right after this.
When you hear the word sustainability, you think, too big. When you feel you have to do something, you think, too complicated. Hold on. Think about your decisions. Get closer. Those that are big or small for you. Your decisions and other people's decisions. Those that have to be made every day. Step back a little. Think of the decisions that add up to many more. There are millions of decisions that change everything, little by little, for the better. Now think about who can help you make better decisions. And there we are. So that what you save, the planet saves too. To keep moving forward without leaving anyone behind. And now, when you hear the word sustainability, you think opportunities. At BBVA, we're putting new solutions at your fingertips in order to build a greener and more inclusive future. BBVA, creating opportunities.
Welcome back. Before the break, I was talking to Mark Rourke, the CEO of Schneider National, about his career and the development of the company over the past 88 years. So, Mark, Schneider's committed to reducing CO2 per mile emissions by 7.5% by 2025, 60% by 2035. In late January, Schneider got its first shipment of 100 battery electric trucks from Daimler Truck North America. How many will the fleet have in operation by the end of 2023? What impact do you think EV trucks are going to have on the company's long-term efforts to decrease its carbon footprint?
Yeah, we'll have 100 operating by the end of the year. We just started taking delivery here in January, and those will be deployed out in Southern California. And it's absolutely imperative to our ability to get to a 60% reduction is zero emission vehicles. The other big emission reduction opportunity is converting over the road to intermodal. And between those two, those are how we're going to get after that carbon emission goals that we've set out for ourselves.
Do you spend a lot of time in Vader's factories and learning more about this stuff and sort of paint a picture for our listeners about, where you see the whole industry, either maybe 10 years out, as you see moving up a hill, that 18-wheeler throwing off a lot of smoke as its engine revs up to get up to altitude?
It is really exciting. They are great vehicles to drive. If you've been in an electric car, it's very, very similar. There's high efficiency of energy that gets right to the wheels. And so it drives like a car. It drives up a hill. So you'll get out of that starting spot a lot quicker. So people will be adjusting to that. So our drivers love them. What we have to get better, though, is range over time and cost over time. Right now, in a diesel equivalent, we could go 1,100, 1,200 miles in between fuelings. We can go about 200 miles in between charges. And so it's a much different operation, and you have to apply that in operations that can deal with that constraint.
You see the range getting longer, or do you see the charging infrastructure getting better, or both?
Yeah, I think you'll see battery technology advance, which will help with range and perhaps weight, because that's the other big constraint. A lot of batteries have a lot of weight, which means less cargo. But the number one issue that we have as a country is the infrastructure. How do you get the alternative energy, whether it be hydrogen, whether it be electric, distributed in the amount that you need to the locations that you need to take advantage of that? And that's been our big learning. We're 3 years in the process right now just on the infrastructure for charging in our Southern California fleet, which is where those first 100 are going. And that's taken more time and more effort. And again, I think people will get better at that over time. But that, to me, is the biggest constraint for the country right now.
The other aspect that you talked about in the sustainability area, the sort of transition to more intermodal. Talk about like one of your partners, specifically Union Pacific, NYSE ticker symbol UNP, their efforts to reduce carbon emissions and streamline operations within and across the nation's borders.
Yeah, we just recently moved our Western partner to the UP. We did that effective here in January. They did a terrific job. Our whole planning team, we're quite excited, because they offer more lane pairs, which allows us to convert more of that over the road for emission reduction. They also have more departures frequently throughout the week, and so that fits very well with our goal of doubling intermodal by 2030. And they have very efficient, which is also an important consideration, connections with our Eastern partner, which is the CSX. And so we put all that together and we said, hey, the UP relationship and what they can do is paramount to our success and our goal of doubling intermodal by 2030.
For the uninitiated like me, thinking about how you at Schneider choose your partners and thinking about the CSX network, call it in the eastern part of the country, and Union Pacific in the west, what's the friction in terms of changing a partner? You must have gone through a big process to say Union Pacific offers a lot of routes, a lot of different places that we can build our intermodal business. But how tough is that decision? What's involved in doing that?
It's a difficult decision because it's disruptive, right? You're changing locations, you're changing facilities, you're changing technology. When you're integrated with a Class 1 railroad, you're deeply integrated. And so to disconnect that and take that to a new, you have to be really thoughtful about that, and you have to be convinced that that's better for your business. And we had a good partner before. We just feel this is the best for our business long term, and we're off to a great start.
What's the customer benefit in terms of working with a CSX and a UP and a Schneider to increase my operations and efficiency if I'm Best Buy?
Well, everybody has their best routes based upon their connections. And so when we go out and talk to our customers, we're really talking about the strengths that we have from origin A to destination B. And so that's paramount because you want to be fairly close on both ends to be most efficient. But we also offer with that exchange that you get an economic benefit of taking advantage of a double stack container on the rail, which is more efficient and more cost effective. Mm-hmm. And you also have less fuel expounded in that transaction. So there's savings in a couple different ways for the customer. And then you throw the emissions on top of it. You've got really a very strong value proposition for those trying to reduce that.
Back in July of 2022, you talked about the return of seasonality to the trucking industry and the impact it was having across the freight market on prices and demand. What does that mean for the company's continued growth, seasonality?
Well, we're coming off just an unprecedented period, the COVID era, if you will, where we had 2 years that almost every day was like peak holiday season shipping. And so therefore, there really wasn't seasonality where you go through different products at different times of the year or different volumes or different flows. It was all the same every day. It was almost Groundhog Day. And so very challenging period for our customers, very challenging for us to be able to do everything our customers wanted them to do, us to do for them. And now as we're starting to get back to some level of normalcy, we're seeing the seasonality start to come back into the business, right? So generally, if you're going to get patio furniture delivered into a home improvement store, there's a certain time of year that comes in, and You have a certain, usually through the imports, through our intermodal offering, then into our DC to store. So you have these typical patterns that you can plan for. COVID kind of threw all that out the window. It was like whenever people could get the product, they would get it, and it didn't really matter what time of year it was, and everything was just off its normal cadence. And so we're starting now get back to what we would consider more normal planning.
Had a little side hustle for a couple of years of making seltzer. We produced it in upstate New York, put it in a warehouse, really wanted to sell it on Amazon, learned water is not a very good thing to sell through Amazon, but nevertheless learned a little bit about their processes where their inventory of our stuff running low, you press a button and magically a truck appears at our warehouse, picks it up and brings it to an Amazon distribution center. You've now seen from 87, at the beginning of your tenure at Schneider to the present, how disruptive Amazon has been to so many different types of industries and moving goods from their origin to market to the customer's front door. Give me a little primer on how you deal with that kind of disruption and what Amazon is up to.
Well, I think they've changed consumer expectation for everybody. And so, as you would expect, other retailers and other businesses haven't stood still, and they've made the adjustments to compete. But the demands for speed and the demands for where inventory is one of the reasons the average length of haul has shrunk so much, is because we're putting inventory in more places to respond to that expectation consumers have. And there's various strategies, right? There's the home delivery strategy that you mentioned there with someone like Amazon, but there's also buy online, pick up in store, and there's all kinds of other ways that other retailers can take their brick and mortar advantage to apply against that solution. And so we're there to help them regardless of what their strategy is, because the store can be a powerful tool for both in-person buying and also for buying online.
Talking about strategies, Mark, we talked in the first half of the show how during your tenure as COO, you leveraged technology to help drivers. But in the last year, you've launched Schneider Freight Power. What does the platform offer bulk shippers, and why is Schneider best positioned to help make this technology play?
B2B is a little behind what we've experienced as consumers in the B2C world. And so what we're doing with Freight Power for shipper and for carrier is a way to just to digitally connect. And so you can see status, you can get a price, you can do everything from your phone to your mobile and not have to pick up the phone and call somebody. If, as our younger people are learning, we'd much rather do interactions that way, but business is starting to go that way. And so that's what we're after with Freight Power for shipper and carrier, is just to find people that want to operate in a different way and do so in a way that's very seamless and easy for them to do it.
Schneider's involved in a number of projects like this one that was being reported by NBC's Jake Ward. Let's take a listen.
Imagine looking in your rearview mirror and seeing this 70,000-pound 18-wheeler behind you without anyone at the wheel. Well, we are pretty much there, because this truck is driving itself. Aurora Innovation already has autonomous trucks like this one cruising the highway, just with a babysitter at the wheel.
At Aurora, we're building self-driving technology.
Sensors track what's going on around the truck, and an onboard computer not only drives, it does so as politely as possible so it won't freak out anyone else on the road.
It's a combination of hardware, software, and data services that allows us essentially operate vehicles autonomously.
These trucks all share a common robot brain, and that brain has driven 5 million real-world miles. Every time one truck drives, they all get smarter.
I don't know if Bob Wyatt would want to be known as a babysitter behind the wheel, Mark, but in addition to Aurora, you've announced projects with companies like Torque and Too Simple. How is Schneider shaping a more autonomous trucking future, and how do you think autonomous trucking is going to shape the future?
Yeah, the technology is advancing, and what's really neat about it, it's helping in today's world, even though it's not quite ready for full autonomous, and the industry is working towards that. But there's benefits along the way. It's how collision mitigation got to the point where that could be on the trucks today and help drivers be safer. And so as we continue to adopt in the step towards autonomy, the industry will be safer as a result. So there's benefits along that journey. But ultimately, what we think is the most likely outcome, it'll look more like the intermodal product offering. Maybe we'll have a driver pick up first mile where it's easier to do with a driver because of all the mapping requirements for autonomous, and maybe the exit to exit in the highway could be done autonomously, and we'll drop it at an exit and have a driver do the final mile. So that's one such scenario that could, A, benefit the industry, but also benefit the driver. Those are very attractive positions. They can be home every day. And for those who want to have a more
sort of more
schedule.
like a harbor pilot.
Yeah, very much so. So, we're not there yet. We got probably years of development to get, but there's learning along that path, and we'll continue to be at the forefront to learn how to best integrate that into our operations when the time is ready.
It's going to take a while to get there, and at least for the next couple of years, you're going to need to continue to find the drivers that are going to fill what's expected to be a 160,000 person shortfall for the industry. How are you leveraging social media through TikTok videos like this to attract the new talent that you need?
My name is Wes Arnott, and I'm on the Schneider Ambassador team. While I started my driving career back in 1990, I've been with Schneider since 1999, and I've been a training engineer since 2000. Because of Schneider's training, I've logged over 2.4 million accident-free miles, and I'm also a member of the Schneider Hall of Fame with over 23 consecutive years of safe driving. Now, I'm a teacher at heart, so my passion is in helping others gain the skills they need for their career. My goal here is to demonstrate that Schneider's core values, safety, integrity, respect, and excellence, can help you to be a safe and successful driver as well. I hope to see you out there, motor safe.
The work of finding and creating and molding a Schneider driver. How do you do it?
Yeah, it's one of the most rewarding things that we get a chance to do is see someone just thrive in their career. And with our brand, we do attract a safety-orientated culture. And that's the benefit of that being first and always in how we approach our business. And what a great representation that TikTok was. And that's almost exclusively how we reach candidates today. It's all digital. It's through Facebook. It's through Instagram. It's TikTok. That's how we get out and get our message out. And the days of paper applications and newspaper ads, that's not where it's at today. And so those ambassadors are so real and can make it so real. They're our best advertisers.
Profile what will be a successful driver for Schneider.
We have all walks of life. We have PhDs, we have NASA engineers, and we have folks that came from the manufacturing world that were looking for a better wage, better benefits, more adventure in their life. So, and we're growing women, which is incredibly important. We're up to 12% of our professional drivers being women, and a few years ago that was 6 to 7%. And so the technology and the trucks and the safety orientation is only going to help us do more attracting across a very broad section of the country.
Along that kind of recruiting effort comes sort of changes in the law. People can enter the driving field a lot earlier than ever before. In June of 2022, you spoke with Wisconsin Public Radio about a pilot project to get more 18-year-olds behind the wheel of long-haul routes. How is the process to create an apprenticeship program to get high school grads into the field with a 90% first-year attrition rate gone?
That's one of the disadvantages we have as an industry is bridging that gap of an apprenticeship between 18 and 21 coming up. You have to go somewhere else before you're eligible to drive a truck. Conversely, you have to balance that with, as you maybe think when you were 18 years old, and what's the safety risk taking. And so we have to balance the risk of that and our insurance company. So we're still feeling our way through, but something that gives us a chance to connect with younger people earlier in their career, we think is a benefit.
So Mark, one of the things that struck me as I was doing my own long haul drive last night and had the opportunity to actually listen to a State of the Union rather than focus on the optics and watching it was something that President Biden said, I think is related to the creation of new chip factories in the United States and the jobs that were going to come from it. They could pay, $150,000 a year making chips here in the United States. And one of the things he pointed out was this is not the kind of a job that requires 4 years of a college education to be successful at, and yet we're going to be making chips forever, and these are jobs that can last forever. I would think maybe that the same is true in the truck driving industry, where you mentioned the fact that you have PhDs who are behind the wheel, but it's not necessary. What are your thoughts about sort of this culture that does sort of drive the image of success toward graduation from a 4-year college and what that means versus the reality of modern America, where it says you could have a great career and not have to go through that?
Yeah, and I think you hit on it. I think it is a cultural issue that is what success has to look like. And I think there's many paths of success. And And I couldn't agree more. There's very noble professions that you can have a very successful career, build skills over your lifetime in trucking and interacting with customers, and all the technology it takes is one of those careers. And so I think that has to be more in the national discussion about the paths of success, and they all don't lead to a 4-year university.
Wisconsin is a hotbed of machinery and manufacturing. You have your own sort of jobs website where people can sign up to work for Schneider National. Your colleagues have $100,000 plus jobs available, and yet sometimes the choices that people make, whether they're going into the retail industry or something else that is not sort of career track, how does that make you feel when you see these really good hands-on jobs out there? And what do we need to do as a community, a culture, a nation to have people thinking about, more career track earlier in their lives?
And you hit on it. There's opportunities in so many facets of the economy for skill building and great careers, and hands-on. You learn new skills and get paid a very, very handsome wage. And I just don't think that gets into the psyche of the community and of the young person enough. And I think we as in a business community have to bridge those opportunities better than today, because there's paths of success far in excess of just going to a 4-year or a 2-year college. And so I hear it all the time from my counterparts in the community, whether it's a machinist, whether it's a welder, and $100,000 positions that they are struggling to get filled. And we just have to find a way to bridge that gap, because it's a great opportunity.
What's the way to communicate to a 16, 17, 18-year-old? Is it directly to them? Is it through their parents? Is it the conversation around the dining room table?
Well, I think it starts in all of the above. And I think our incentive structure with the high schools that are tied to the colleges, we have to have a way to get in and break that cycle a little bit, at least get on even footing to talk about what other opportunities are available for folks. And so, and maybe it is the incentive culture of education that we have to help them see, and as a business community, how we can best serve the state and how we can best serve the country.
So getting enough drivers, at least until the industry begins to evolve toward autonomous, is one issue, but without the equipment for them to use is another problem facing the industry. In November, you spoke about the difficulty in finding inventory to replace aging fleets. Is this a result of the microchip shortages and other supply chain issues that are facing retail vehicles, or are there additional barriers to getting large trucks on the road?
Yeah, it's been a challenge really for the last 2 years, not only on the truck side, but the trailing equipment side. So we've been under allocation, even as a huge purchaser of equipment every year, just because of the scarcity of resources, whether labor to make a trailer or labor to make a truck, or, as you mentioned, a series of parts issues from around the globe, because how tightly the globe is connected relative to the supply chain. And so we don't have as many new trucks as we wanted. We're a little older in our fleet than we want. And so we're going to start knocking that down here as we get into 2023 and 2024. It's still a challenge.
Congress passed the CHIPS Act. President Biden last night at the State of the Union address talked a lot about the emphasis on building and making in America. Presidents have said this for 100 years. You're a buyer. You go where the equipment is based on what people have and their ability to produce the trucks that you need. What is the state of domestic production versus the international manufacturers?
Yeah, on the truck side and the trailer side, almost all of that is stateside. The componentry, though, comes from around the world, and that's where the challenge has been. But I do think, to your point, I think there will be a trend more nearshoring. I think Mexico can be a winner here. I think companies are looking to get their supply chain less risky, which means more domestic production where they can. But those are multi-year efforts. Those don't happen overnight. But we do see our customers looking for strategies to shorten that supply chain and take risk out of it.
Talking about overnight as we wrap, we've talked about a lot of topics in our conversation. How are you looking, Mark, at 2023, and what is keeping you awake at night, either out of excitement for what is offered in front of us or concerns that the industry is facing?
Well, we're presently just dealing and getting through some of the excesses that got created through the supply chain issues of COVID and the overhang that inventory had in the country. And so I'll be really interested by the time maybe this comes out, what our retailers report on their inventory levels here coming up in the first quarter. My sense is that we're getting closer to getting back to a normal replenishment cycle, which we think strength will build from a freight economy standpoint throughout 2023.
You've been there since 1987. You've seen technology evolve. What ways do you look at your screen and say, things are all right, or we got issues here?
This time of year, we also follow those weather channels pretty heavily too. And well, you've been quite fortunate out here this year. Other parts of the country haven't. So weather can be hurricanes, all those things can really throw a monkey wrench in what we're trying to do. So we're probably weather junkies first and foremost. Digitally, we know where all our assets are, and all of them have either a satellite or a cellular connection that we know if they're empty, if they're loaded, and so that we can be most efficient, because that's what we want to do, is take the empty miles and all the inefficiency out by having the best information possible to make decisions. And so give our team great credit, and it's important to run a good operation on behalf of your customer.
Running a good operation on behalf of your customer. That's really all a company can do when it starts its legacy 88 years ago, comes public on the New York Stock Exchange in 2017, and prepares for the future. You've talked about what you see 2023 sort of processing the backload that we've built up over the last couple of years through COVID, but sketch for me Schneider in 10 years from now.
We see ourselves as a growth company. One of the things that we have a terrific legacy as a truckload carrier, and we're very, very proud of that. But we're also proud of the fact that half our revenues now and half our earnings are coming from non-traditional services that are much less asset intensive. So we've talked intermodal several times on this podcast, but also our growing logistics and brokerage. We're leveraging and bringing freight together with third-party carriers, with our trailer, with their trailer. And that's also a great service to our customers, but it helps us grow our business without having to have a driver in every location and a truck in every location. We can leverage others. And so that's where technology really comes to bear. We would see our company continue to evolve in that way.
Well, I look forward to watching your evolution. Look forward to welcoming you back to the New York Stock Exchange for, I guess, in 2027 will be your 10th anniversary of the IPO. Let's do it again, shall we?
We should.
Thanks a lot for coming in.
Thanks.
That's our conversation for this week. Our guest was Mark Rourke, the CEO and President of Schneider National. That's NYSE ticker symbol SNDR. If you like what you heard, please rate us on iTunes so other folks know where to find us. And if you've got a comment or a question you'd like one of our experts to tackle on a future show, or you want to hear from leaders of listed companies like Mark Rourke of Schneider National, email us at icehouse@ice.com or tweet at us at icehousepodcast. Our show is produced by Pete Ash, with production assistance and editing from Ian Wolfe. I'm Josh King, your host, signing off from the library of the New York Stock Exchange. Thanks for listening. Talk to you next week.
Information contained in this podcast was obtained in part from publicly available sources and not independently verified. Neither ICE nor its affiliates make any representations or warranties, express or implied, as to the accuracy or completeness of the information, and do not sponsor, approve, or endorse any of the content herein, all of which is presented solely for informational and educational purposes. Nothing herein constitutes an offer to sell, a solicitation of an offer to buy any security, or a recommendation of any security or trading practice. Some portions of the preceding conversation may have been edited for the purpose of length or clarity.